Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses with my co-host John Sharan and Ardina Seward. I want to wish you both a happy Hanukkah because today is the first full day of the Festival of Lights.
Thank you. So where's my present?
I'll just say thank you, Peter.
Fork it over, baby. Give me that present.
It's a week-long.
Isn't my present a present? I don't think so.
I'm not commenting on that.
I'm a presentless Jew. What can I tell you?
But your presence is here. Presence.
Yeah. Don't even try it. Let's just forget about that. So we have a guest. By the way, how are both of you doing?
I'm great, except for the fact that I'm upset about this ridiculous insanity that's coming out of Cleveland.
Which ridiculous insanity?
The fact that they've decided "Baby, It's Cold Outside" is a song that is unacceptable to be played on the airwaves anymore.
Alrighty then, we're gonna skip that controversy for now, but we can come back to it another week if you like.
But we have another controversy.
Yeah. What's that, Ardina?
The other controversy is the Migrant Caravan.
Yeah. And segueing into that, we have on the phone a Tijuana resident who's in San Diego right now because he has a better phone line, which makes perfect sense to me. His name is Scott Miner. He is a former radio DJ, bail bondsman, and I think he must have a raconteur personality. Am I wrong about that?
You got me.
Okay, I figured. If you're going from DJ to bail bondsman, you have to have an interesting way of seeing the world.
Yeah, I've got a few stories, yeah.
But you're originally from Schenectady.
Schenectady, New York, and I just heard the weather forecast right before I came on. That's why I live out here.
Don't start. Don't start. Are you a Union? Are you a Union College hockey fan?
No, my mother got her master's degree at Union College, but I mainly used to go to the library when I was in high school to hit on the women.
Whoa!
That falls into
the Me Too people love you right now.
But wait a minute, if he was in high school and he was hitting on women, that means they were of a legal age, and that was considered cute back then.
Yes.
Well, so was "Baby, It's Cold Outside." That was cute back then.
We're tabling the "Baby, It's Cold Outside." So you've been, I don't know if an unwilling observer or willing observer or an aghast observer over what's happening at the border. So why don't you describe your reaction, for starters, over what you're seeing on an everyday basis in Tijuana?
Okay, on a typical basis. Now, I live in Tijuana for the cost of living. It's much cheaper than living in California, which is very expensive. So on a typical day or a typical week, I'll cross maybe 3 or 4 times for shopping or working. I drive Uber to supplement my Social Security pension. And typically it'll take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, or if I time it right, it's as little as half an hour.
By the way, have any of you crossed the border to or from Tijuana?
No.
I had not there, no.
Well, I made the fatal mistake. And actually, it wasn't fatal. When 3 weeks before I got married, my wife had a trip to San Diego for a legal
business
conference, and we took a bus to Tijuana. We went to High Line. We went to have dinner, and we went shopping. So we get to the border.
Okay.
So we get to the border coming back, and this guy says to me, "What do you have to declare?" I said, "I declare I'm an American," and he laughed. And then he goes, no, what did you buy? I said, I bought socks. He looked at me and goes, you bought what? I bought Pierre Cardin socks. He goes, get out of here. Just go. That's not what's happening now in San Diego.
You sock importer, you.
So you were saying, Scott, about what you were observing as you crossed from Tijuana to San Diego 3 or 4 times a week.
How it's changed.
Yes. So last week, or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, they had closed a few of the border lanes to be able to put up the barbed wire. And so that was in lieu of the caravan arriving. It still hadn't arrived yet. So instead of my typical hour, hour and a half or less, it took me 4 hours because they had closed a few of the lanes to put up the barbed wire.
Is that each direction, or when you came back, did you have the same 4 hours?
Oh, no. Coming back, there was not a problem. You can come into Mexico. They're not worried about people
Leaving
or
the United
migrants
States,
coming in. They've already arrived in Mexico trying to get to the United States.
Well, unfortunately, we had a really short period in our first 15 minutes, but we're going to come back with Scott Miner, and when we come back, I'm going to let the more intelligent of us ask the questions. I'm going to step back and marvel at the sagacious questions of Mr. Turan and Ms. Seward. But Scott, I want to wish you a happy Hanukkah too, by the way, in case you know of that holiday.
Well, I don't. I'm
never
a
heard of it?
traditional Christmas. Yes. I've had Jewish neighbors growing up,
Great.
so I know about it. And I used to
on
be
that-
envious of my Jewish neighbors because they got
Well,
presents
on that
every
note,
day.
I'm going to have to cut you off because we're going to break. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. We'll be back after a long Fox News break.
Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Charan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Charan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward. And today, the surrounding area extends all the way out to Tijuana, Mexico, where the situation that grabs national news is, of course, the situation with the attempted crossing over of the immigrants who are trying to come forward from South America and Central America. And our guest on the phone today is Scott Miner, an American from Schenectady who is living in Tijuana at the present time. And Scott, you know, you were talking about how the situation in Tijuana has changed. How has the situation changed, and have you noticed a change in attitude among fellow Americans down in Tijuana regarding this situation?
Well, the attitude as far as fellow Americans is very few. I mean, there are expats living there, like myself, for the cost of living or whatnot. But mostly the attitude from Mexicans in the city is, the general consensus is they are not in favor of the caravan. Now, there's many reasons for that. A lot of the anti-caravan sentiment has to do with the fact of the sheer numbers that have just overrun the capacity for the facilities available.
And what we, talk a little bit about that, because we're talking about 3, 5, up to 10,000 people we're talking about now. What sort of strains does that put on the local community?
I think at last count there was about 6,000 total. So no matter what your feelings are as far as humanitarian, you put 6,000 of anybody in your backyard, it becomes a strain. So right now, they, as of yesterday, they decided that they're going to try and move them from a sports complex where they were in kind of makeshift tents and tarps and different things, and that because of a recent rain has become flooded, to a further away from the border complex that was used for concerts. What they're saying...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Continue.
What they're saying is that they're not forcing people to leave, but they are going to be withdrawing sanitation and food and health availability.
So what's going to happen then to people who decide that they don't want to go? That they don't want to go to the new facility? Will they become homeless?
Well, I mean, what happens when you don't have sanitation or I mean, you're going to have thousands of essentially homeless people in the streets with no support facilities. Whereas if they are willing to go to the new location, then they're going to have all kinds of things available.
And
does that make sense?
It does, but and the issues of safety and health, I think, are paramount out there. But do the issues of safety and health, does that extend to the impact this has on the residents who are down there? Because in addition to how it impacts the migrants themselves, what sort of impact does that have on the local community?
Well, the local community, ironically enough, is saying things like, they're not welcome here, go home, you're not sending your best. Where have we heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, in addition to that, just the overrunning of the facilities and the resentment of, hey, what about our poor people? You've got the fact that because of the border closure and the fact that there was what I think was an agitated charging of the border where they had to use tear gas. And by the way, that was not the first time that tear gas was used by the Border Patrol on immigrants charging the border.
No, they pointed that out on MSNBC, that it happened 38 times during the administration for Obama.
Correct.
So that this is just an example, just the most recent example, and not an isolated instance. And I'm curious, have you experienced the migrants themselves? I mean, I'm curious about the demographic, because for a while, some of the mainstream media were saying that, it was mostly women and children. But then recently I saw something on MSNBC where they said that there were no more than 5 or 10% women and children, that it was mostly working age men.
I couldn't attest to the actual breakdown of the demographics, but I think one of the talking points that they were talking about with the gassing was that there was a woman with her 2 young children. Whether, my question would be, why was she there?
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that there's what did Ardina say? There were
agent provocateur.
Exactly. You pronounce that much better than I could. That all of a sudden, they're agitating, and there's guys with megaphones saying, charge, go ahead, but they're not participants. All of a sudden, they're drawing back, and the Border Patrol supposedly was responding to young men throwing rocks and debris at them, and so that's their response, is to fire rubber bullets and throw tear gas. And it just so happened that there was a woman, whether she was curious or provoked to join that crowd.
Or used as a bit of propaganda.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
Yes. And the reason that it's a caravan in the first place is that I'm finding out that there's safety in numbers. So, go ahead.
Who's feeding them?
Well, from what I understand, when they were passing through Mexico, and by the way, they did overrun police barricades and resistance at Mexico's southern border.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
And that's been documented. I think there's YouTube videos and stuff like that.
Yes.
Passing through, they were being fed and offered places to stay and money in some cases. What I would imagine the sentiment would be is that, okay, you're passing through, you're not staying here. So, yes, we'll help you out. When they get to Tijuana and they're stuck, and by the way, I asked a border agent yesterday when I passed through, are you processing asylum applications? And he said yes.
Well, Scott, you're going to have to hold your thought there, because we have another commercial break coming right here. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. Our special guest today is Scott Miner, and we'll be back with him right after this.
With world and national.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
We are back. We are here. You are listening. This is Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Ardina Seward. It's WVOX 1460. Our guest is...
I like your tagline.
Scott.
That was cute.
It was.
That's John and Peter in the background having a separate conversation.
No, we're not.
No, we're talking about... You did a good job
Wait,
there.
yours.
We like
Great.
that.
These are my guys. And my other guy who's on the radio right now is our guest, Scott Miner. And Scott, we were talking about the Migrant Caravan, and I think, I'm getting brain fog. John, what was your last question? Because I wanted to segue from that.
Well, I was just saying that, we're talking about the groups that are actually in there, and what the impact is of the 6,000 people who are there in terms of safety and health is having on the community. And we were also talking about the demographic breakdown. I mean, the point was there that we mentioned that, news reports have now shifted from it being, mostly women and children to it being substantially less than half. So.
Well, if I can comment on that.
Sure.
There was a large contingent of LGBTQ or TQ, I can never get that acronym right, that eventually I think was numbering about 3,000 or so. So that's maybe half of the whole number that eventually broke off from the main caravan because of harassment that they were experiencing from fellow caravanners. There was a comment by a woman on the radio about the reason that she joined the caravan, that it became a caravan in the first place, because there were safety in numbers. If a young woman or a woman with children or whatever, tried to make that exodus all the way from Central America to the United States border, she's going to encounter robbery and possible rapes and that kind of thing.
Predators.
So it becomes a caravan because there's safety in numbers. And so she also commented that because of the gang presence in a lot of the Central American countries that are there, and the governments do not have the capacity to deal with the gangs, so the gangs are kind of running rampant and causing problems as far as a young woman becomes bait for, or they threatened to be, they have to be their girlfriend of a gang member. And if not, then she's fearing all kinds of rape and harassment in their home country. Besides that, the poverty level is so severe that between the gang violence and poverty, that's the cause for all these people leaving their country.
Now, the New York Times has published a story about La Lista, a list that apparently or supposedly the migrants themselves have put together about people for a pecking order in which they can apply for asylum. Have you seen anything or heard anything about this?
No, I've heard that there is a list about 5,000 strong. And again, the sheer numbers are overrunning the capacity to process. I think I heard something about, there's thousands of migrants and dozens daily being processed just because it is an extensive process to file paperwork and everything else. So I'm sure there's going to be a backlog.
Well, the list supposedly is providing some order to chaos, and it's being maintained and updated by asylum seekers themselves.
Reportedly.
I have not heard that.
Well, the Times did a story, and then and some of the Spanish language newspapers have done stories similar to those. I think the Times probably got it from a Spanish website, Spanish-speaking website.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sounds like a good idea. I just don't know how
And speaking
organized
of
any it
leadership and coordination, do you see organization among the migrants, or does it all just seem kind of like random chaos? Is there structure to the way they're being handled now, or the way they're actually handling themselves within the group?
Well, I've heard, to be honest, I don't know if there's any kind of organization per se. I know that once that they've arrived in Tijuana, there are humanitarian groups that are trying to help. And again, the sheer numbers, I keep going back to that, are just overwhelming the facilities and capacities to help them.
But what I'm saying, on a day-to-day basis, do you see people from the Migrant Caravan mingling with the general population in Tijuana? Are you seeing an increase in vagrancy? Are you seeing an increase in litter in the city itself?
Yes. The sanitation, like they've got porta potties set up, but again, the overwhelming numbers are causing them to overflow, and that's, I think, one of the reasons that the city is trying to get the caravan itself, the mass, to move to a bigger facility that's able to handle the expanded numbers.
I was going to say, some of the American media has also reported that there is an extensive amount of health issues with some of these people down there, ranging from TB to AIDS to a variety of other illnesses. Has that been noticed in the Tijuana community? And if it has been, is the community concerned and taking any special measures about it?
Well, rumors abound. There's conspiracy theories that George Soros is paying for this, that the Republicans are paying for this. In this day and age where fake news abounds, it's hard to know exactly what to believe. I mean, I've talked to several people, residents of Tijuana, that are saying that the migrants are bringing disease and AIDS and tuberculosis and everything else. I think due to the fact that the sanitation is iffy, that the cases that are happening now can only get worse as far as general numbers.
In terms of you spoke about Tijuana residents, and in terms of a Tijuana resident backlash, is that backlash growing, and do you foresee a time where you're going to have a real resistance on the part of Tijuana residents, business owners, where it could get a little uncomfortable for the migrants? Yeah. I think it's uncomfortable because, and I've heard that a lot of them are going, well, wait a minute, this isn't what I was expecting. I think, the golden dream of, okay, all we have to do is get to the border and then we're home free, and that's not happening. What about I know it's kind of it's difficult to say that you've actually seen it, but there's a report of a number of pregnant women traveling in that caravan. Now, what happens when the woman has her child in Mexico? Does she get automatic citizenship? Obviously, the child would be a Mexican citizen, but what's the process from there?
I honestly don't know, but I know that was the scenario for a lot of Mexican women crossing over to have what they call anchor babies in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say. No, I lost my train of thought.
Okay, well don't lose it, because we're getting into our final 15 minutes and we're headed to a break. You are listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, WVOX 1460 AM. You can call in
WVOX.com.
And WVOX.com, streaming live on the internet. You are listening to Scott Miner. If I didn't say that before, I'm saying it again. And we will have more to talk about on the other side
including
of the break.
Who's going to be on next week.
Well, we're
negotiating
with that. But if you want to call in, the number is 914-636 0110 for comments. See you in a few. Stay with us. Don't go away.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Back to the fun. Westchester Eye on the Radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Sharan along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward. And we're speaking with former Schenectady resident Scott Miner, now a resident of Tijuana, and we're discussing the realities as he's experienced them of what this migrant group is dealing with down there. And in the commercial break, Scott, we were talking amongst ourselves, and we're sort of curious about how are the local law enforcement authorities dealing with the migrants down there, and are there any concerns about the fact that this is such a large group, if it does decide to get out of hand, that they have the capacity to deal with it?
Well, if the only way that I think it would get out of hand is if, again, they try to charge the border. There is a augmented police presence in Mexico. They've got the municipal as well as state and federal police, and so there's more of a presence of the state police and federal police, as well as more Army presence to augment the local police force. And of course, the Border Patrol has still beefed up. When I crossed this morning, I asked one of the agents, hey, is the barbed wire going to be taken down, or is that a permanent thing? And his response was, well, when the Hondurans go home, we'll take it down.
Now, I'm sort of curious, we talk about the different police forces in Mexico. Are they a warm or outgoing force, or is this more of an authoritarian force?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The type of, with the different police forces, the state, the local, the federal police forces in Mexico, are these authoritative groups, or are they more of a warm and friendly group? Are they trying to be kind and generous to the migrants, or are they taking a hard liner of we'll protect our citizens and we'll do what we can to separate them from these migrants?
I can't attest to that all. I think that their presence involves is keeping order. Mm-hmm. In other words, to make sure, like you said, it doesn't get out of hand and rioting in the streets. What I was starting to say before the break was that one of the other resentments from Mexico's side is that the timing of this caravan was, like I said earlier, right before Thanksgiving and Good Friday, which is typically a day when a lot of people are trying to cross over for shopping to buy, Thanksgiving food and presents on Black Friday, as well as I can't tell you how many people live in Mexico and Mexican citizens that have visas and are able to work in San Diego. And because of the border closing, and it's a two-way street. That there's people coming from the U.S. to Tijuana for shopping and tourism and that kind of thing. And because they're seeing on the news, oh, the border's closed, I'm not going, the government is claiming that millions of dollars in revenue and lost wages and that kind of thing were involved. So that's one of the other resentments that Mexicans have because of the caravan.
On a day-by-day basis, how has this impacted your life, Scott?
Just that the first week before it even arrived, I had to spend 4 hours in line. Since last week, it hasn't taken me, I think, more than an hour on a Tuesday to cross. So that's kind of not really affected me at all. The park where the sports complex where the caravan is now is a place where I actually used to take my 5-year-old to play, and so obviously that's out. I can't take him there until, and I'm sure it's going to be a massive cleanup to restore that to the way it was after the caravan is gone.
We noticed that Mexico elected a more conservative federal government recently. Have you seen an attitude in people to become less friendly to migrants?
Yeah, well, I think, no matter where you go, there's nativism, to use somebody else's word. In the Dominican Republic, they're afraid of Haitians crossing over. In Ecuador, they don't want the Peruvians coming. Now the United States is seemingly becoming more nativistic. I talked to a woman last night who was from Massachusetts, and she said, yeah, we don't like people from New Hampshire coming in. So,
it's like,
maybe that's just part of the human condition. Who knows?
It's like that scene in Blazing Saddles where they stand up and say, okay, everybody can come in except for the Irish. And then they all say, and then they say, okay, everybody can come in.
Yeah.
And Mel Brooks spoke Yiddish as a Native American chief.
Oi.
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 But
Yeah.
to get back to John's point, have you seen a shift in political preference? I mean, Mexico wasn't exactly pro-Trump, but do you feel that as a result of the migrant crisis that a lot of people who wouldn't give him the time of day before are starting to turn around and say, well, maybe he has a point?
Yes, I think we discussed this the other day that I saw a bumper sticker before the campaigns even started in a parking lot that said "Everyone welcome except Donald Trump," and I thought I got a big kick out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other day on social media there was a claim that protesters, when the first wave was staying in that sports complex, there was about 100 Mexican protesters shouting pro-Trump slogans. And that just stuck me wrong. I said, wait a minute, somebody's paying these people. They can't be really doing that. But maybe I think that because of the sheer overwhelmingness of this whole thing, it is affecting a lot of people to where they're going, well, yeah, maybe he's right. Maybe, they shouldn't be here, which I find ironic. But you talk about the president, the new president that was elected and just took office 2 days ago. He's proposing that they have funds made available to the countries in Central America so that they don't leave, so that there's more job opportunities and more economic equality.
Well,
so that they don't leave in the first place.
That would be the ultimate solution. I mean, people aren't going to trek 1,000 miles through mud and adverse conditions just for the fun of it.
Exactly.
They're leaving terrible conditions. But on that note, we're going to have to say goodbye. Thanks for being a great guest on the show, Scott. Shout out to my friends Lucy and Lou Torellis, who actually made our hookup happen. We're going to have next week. I'm working on a couple of interviews, so you're going to have to go to the Facebook page of Westchester Eye on the Radio to find out who is going to be on the show. In the meantime, happy Hanukkah to everybody. You have listened to Westchester Eye on the Radio. We will see you next Monday. So it's bye from Ardina Sword, myself, Peter Moses, John Charan, and again, you can go to the webpage, Westchester Eye on the Radio. Scott, do me a favor. Can you send some pictures of what you see in Tijuana, and I will put them up on the Westchester Eye on the Radio page. So keep checking back, folks, and have a great week.